to All Things Green. I'm Anton, here with my co-host Shelby to discuss a variety of topics from across the sustainability universe. Shelby, how's it going?
Really good. Can I tell you about something dorky that I did recently?
Yeah, always.
Okay, so recently we experienced the Perseid meteor shower. Are you familiar with this?
No.
So the Perseid meteor shower happened like in mid-August, and it was very visible here from Northeast Ohio. You don't need any kind of magnification to see it.
Okay.
Unless you're a glasses wearer, I needed the magnification of my contacts to see it. But you can see it with just your eyes and not a telescope or binoculars or anything. And so I signed up for a meteor shower party.
Oh, cool.
And my husband and I went to a meteor shower party.
Where was it hosted?
Have you ever been out to Lakeview Cemetery?
Yeah.
So for those who are not initiated, for the uninitiated, Lakeview Cemetery is this really beautiful cemetery actually here in Cleveland, Ohio, and it's got Rockefeller buried there.
Yeah.
We've got a president buried there.
Yeah,
All sorts
which
of
one?
McKinley.
I think Garfield too, right?
Frick, yeah, it's Garfield, not McKinley. He's from a different part of Ohio.
Yeah.
Thank you. You quizzed me, and I was wrong.
No, that's
but
okay.
still, we got a president, and all sorts of other famous people are buried there, and it's really pretty. They do all sorts of events.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, they hosted this meteor shower party, and I really liked that as an opportunity to engage with astronomy and being outside. I will say that we didn't actually get the being outside part because it was absolutely pouring rain the night that we went, and so that was like the night you could really see it. But they did bring in astronomers from the Cleveland Natural History Museum, and they talked to us about the phases of the moon, and they showed us a demonstration of making comets out of dry ice, and I got to hold little meteorites in my hand.
No way.
Real ones
From outer space.
that fell to the ground, and they
That's
had
wild.
them in the possession of the museum, so they let us hold them. They were extremely dense. It was like maybe the size of 2 apples squished together, and holding it felt more like holding, well, a lot more than 2 apples. It was
Yeah.
quite heavy, like maybe a 8-pound dumbbell kind of thing.
No kidding.
I guess if I'm describing it by the poundage, I should just say it felt like holding about 8 pounds, but you know what I mean, something that's pretty compact, but very
Yeah,
heavy.
you work out. It's fine.
That's right. So anyway, I just had to tell you about that and put just a shout out there for you or any of our listeners that there are all sorts of community events, especially in cities, where you can enjoy being outside, learning a little bit about the planet, and a lot of times they're free or low cost and family friendly. So that was one of my ways of engaging with the planet this month.
That is super dope, Shelby. Yeah.
And a little dorky.
No, I mean, whatever.
All right, cool. I'll take it. Thanks for listening to my meteor shower
Yeah,
story.
absolutely. Well, back to school, right? That's the name of the game today.
Yeah,
And so I wanted to talk to you a little bit about shopping for back to school supplies.
absolutely. One of my favorite times of the year when I was growing up.
Right. Oh, me too. It was like such a rush,
Oh, yeah.
Maybe you got that new like haircut, maybe you got that new outfit or
Yeah.
outfits,
Yeah.
right?
So I was growing all the time, so I always needed something new.
Yeah. Well, I'm here to say back to school shopping is somewhat unsustainable, but we can make it more sustainable, Shelby.
Okay, that's
Isn't
really
that exciting?
It's very exciting, and I knew you were gonna take it here, where you were gonna say, "Do you love this thing? Let's crush it." But hopefully, hopefully we've got some sustainable solutions so we can still
Yeah.
enjoy back to school in a way that's better for the planet.
Absolutely. I was kind of curious, like how many backpacks do you remember going through like year after year?
Like, I would guesstimate that I got a new backpack every couple of years.
Yeah.
I knew people who went through them much more quickly. I also knew people who used the same backpack for basically the whole time.
Yeah.
But yeah, we definitely recycled them.
That's good. Yeah.
I always got the ones that had my initials on the back.
That's cute.
What about you?
Yeah. Well, I just want to mention you were like a firstborn too, right? So
Yes.
like you also had, all those new backpacks. I think I got some hand-me-downs luckily because I was like the middle child. So like I got Nick, my older brother's backpacks here and there.
Did they say Nick on them?
I don't think so. I think it said JanSport or something. I don't know who JanSport was, but yeah. But we did get a few different backpacks. But looking back on it now, I was kind of curious, like maybe we don't need a new backpack every year. Maybe like a nice quality backpack would be cool. But then also, adding something new every year to just kind of refresh and add another maybe milestone to another year of school.
Like what? What would you add to your backpack to show your years of elementary school you've attained?
Yeah. So I was kicking this idea around with one of our producers, and she's like, "Yo, what if you just do like patches on the backpack?" And I'd be like, "That's so cool." 'Cause like, how cool is it to have like something new, cumulative every year, like showing like what you've been through? It gives that backpack a lot of character.
And yet the backpack remains the same.
Yeah.
Of course, you'd have to have the skill to put the patch on, which I'm gaining, but
Yeah.
not there for yet. But
Well, they got
that'd
the
be
iron-ons sometimes,
Totally.
so you could just do an iron-on.
or an opportunity to teach sustainability at a young age, including
Yes.
repairing clothes and some like sewing techniques.
Exactly.
So you teach that to your little kid. I mean,
Yeah.
of course, we're saying this as two people who don't have kids, and like I totally understand that it takes a lot of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I like this as an idea.
It's a fun idea, and even if you're not like you don't have elementary school kids or middle school kids, like this might be an idea that would go maybe more towards like high school or like even just college kids, like looking for a new backpack. Hey, maybe go dig up that older like vintage looking backpack from your parents' house and like throw some patches on it.
Yeah.
And some pins. I was like definitely a pin guy in college.
Pin PIN or pen
Yeah.
like
PIN. PIN. Yeah,
Putting
I'm not from the
pins on
South.
things.
Yeah.
I am, and so I have been called out for my pin merger.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So we're gonna do some pins and patches on our backpacks.
Yeah.
I mean, as an adult, I use a backpack, and I have not gotten a new one in a long time. So I don't know why I was cycling through them so much when I was younger.
Yeah. Well,
You did mention like maybe it'd be better if you could get a high quality backpack. So
Yeah.
I'm sure there are families who can't afford a high quality backpack.
Yeah, sure,
Maybe they just
sure.
run through them.
So another thing, like just packing lunches for the school year, right? So whether you're in kindergarten or whether you're going to college, there's a sustainable way to go about this, right? Ditch those plastic sandwich bags. If you're packing your sandwich, just get yourself a nice lunchbox that can be reused. Don't do the paper bags. And get yourself a Tupperware that you can pack things in and day out. Something that you could just throw in the dishwasher and use it the next day. I mean, do you have a routine for when you're working in the office and you got to pack lunches?
Oh yeah, I've got those like reusable. Mine are the brand Stasher, but
Stasher.
there's all sorts of them out there now that are little like silicone sandwich bags. They
Oh,
come
yeah,
in
yeah.
all different sizes, and so I use those all the time. I was actually just telling my husband that I feel like we need a couple more because the ones I've had for years,
Yeah.
and I'm not trying to get rid of them. We're not just like updating,
Yeah.
but we use them so frequently, and I end up using them to pack my lunch, but also to store excess food
Yeah.
when I'm cooking. Like I used half of this lemon, but I don't need the other half.
Yeah.
And so I really like how flexible those are. If you're
Yeah.
used to something like a plastic sandwich bag, like a disposable plastic sandwich bag, something like this is a nice way to get that same feeling, but it's something that you can reuse over and over.
Yeah, ditch those single-use plastics, right? And this could even be applicable for like things that you would buy at the grocery store, like what do they call them? The Lunchables?
Yes.
Like they got that plastic container with the plastic film, you rip it off, and you got like 4 crackers and like a little bit of salami or something. Just if you could even ditch that and like just get the separate ingredients and throw them in. There is a convenience factor to the pre-packed lunches, but you're also buying into the single-use plastics that way as well.
Absolutely. Everything is about weighing our options. And so
Yeah.
for you and me who don't have kids and are packing our lunches, maybe we have a little more time. That is one option that we can take to make our lunch a little more sustainable. Maybe in a different family, the necessity is going to require something that is as convenient as possible, but you make changes in other ways. So
Yeah.
we're just throwing out ideas here.
100 emoji. So Shelby, I have a quick question for you.
Yes.
How many reusable water bottles do you have at home?
I probably like that I use primarily for water only have maybe 2, but when it
Yeah.
comes to these little like to go coffee mug, tea mug things, I maybe have more like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been gifted 4 or 5 just in the last year.
Yeah.
I used to proudly curate that to a really small number, but
Yeah.
I've acquired a few.
Well, that's the thing, and I think we've probably even talked about that in a previous episode, right?
Yes.
Like these water bottles kind of accumulate. You want something new, you want to refresh. But something else that our producer kind of gave us the idea about was, how about you spruce up that old water bottle, throw on like a cool sticker. Like for me, I got some like really old water bottles that still hold water, believe it or not. You know, just throw like a Guardian sticker on there, you know, go Gardos.
I love that idea. Can I tell you something a little embarrassing?
Oh yeah, I mean, if you're on air, so
That's
be careful.
true. Nothing crazy. Just
Okay.
that mindset of like wanting something new and a way that it cropped up for me.
Yeah.
We had a contractor working on our house recently and offered him some water because it was a hot day.
Yeah.
We put it in a reusable water bottle and let him keep it while he was walking around doing some stuff around the house. And when he left, my husband said, "Oh man, I'm so sorry. I think I accidentally gave your water bottle away. I think he took it with him." And my first thought was, "Oh my God, I get to get a new one." Which is so, actually he didn't. The contractor gave it back to us. Thanks, contractor. Really, thank you. But I just wanted to say that to point out that we understand that feeling of wanting something new. I thought mine was pretty banged up. It's like a metal one, so it's been really dented. It doesn't really stand straight anymore. And I think in a future or a more historic part of my life, I would have said, "Oh, this doesn't function anymore because it stands crooked. I'll just get a new one."
Yeah.
And clearly that still exists in my brain since I was excited thinking I got a new one. But when I got it back, I'm using it still. Maybe it just needs a sticker.
I think that's cool. Like, it's very common, I think, for Americans especially to just, you know, buy, break, throw it away. But, you know, I think it's something that we can always kind of try and do a little bit of, like, self-reflecting and kind of just push back on that, you know, like a polite pushback against the societal norms of always needing the next new thing, keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it's better for Mother Earth ultimately, right?
Yes.
But while you're cleaning out your locker, you might find some old books. And what do you do with old books, Shelby?
Well, there are a lot of options of what you could do with your old books, but my favorite is to donate them to your local library.
Let's hear about it.
I love libraries, Anton.
Yeah.
Do you have a library card?
No, I don't read. I'm not a nerd.
Yeah, well, fair enough.
No, I'm just kidding. I have a library card to Cuyahoga County Public Library and Cleveland Public Library. So I have a lot of library cards.
Me too. Me too. Actually, when I first moved to Ohio, I attempted to go to the Bureau of Motor Vehicles and get my driver's license, and turned out that I didn't have quite the right paperwork. So I still felt like I needed something new to show that I lived there, and I just went to the library. So I got my library card before I got a driver's license here. And I have totally used it. Actually, I moved to a new county recently, but my old county used to send me annual reviews of how much, or the county library, I should say, would send me reviews of how much money I'd saved by going to my library.
Cool.
It would say like, "Oh, you got 30 books, and so you saved $300. Probably a lot more than that, really."
That's amazing.
And they also would show how much of your taxes went into that library, so you could see sort of the trade-off of, okay, from my taxes I spent $50 on my library, but I used $400 worth of books, so that's a good trade for me.
Saving you time and money. Ding.
Ding, your library. So I'm a big fan of libraries in general. We live in Northeast Ohio, which was like on the forefront of libraries.
Really?
Absolutely, because Carnegie was here,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so he put a lot of investment into it. Same with like the Pittsburgh system.
Yeah.
Our library systems are pretty sweet up here. Okay. But I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the things you can do with your library that might help you live a more sustainable life.
Yeah.
So think about some of the things you can get from the library. You can get physical media like books. You can get DVDs, CDs, that kind of thing. Do you ever check that kind of thing out at the library?
Yeah, growing up, like my sisters and I and my younger brother, it was kind of like a thing. Like we would go and look for a movie, and the sisters would always have more pull. They would always pick the movie they wanted to watch. But
do they any particular favorites spring to mind that they made you watch over and over?
no, we usually were just like hunting around. We didn't really go back to it. Like actually Napoleon Dynamite was one that we really liked. Yeah.
I used to get Fern Gully like over and over and over.
I've never seen that one.
It's an environmental classic. You got to watch
Yeah?
it.
Okay.
Go get Fern Gully from the library. So you can get physical media, but there's also digital media. So you can get all those same things, books, movies, music, but you can stream them digitally. So like our library offers us access to something called Hoopla, which gives you like movies, TV shows that you can watch for free. And then there's also Overdrive, Overdrive or the Libby
Yes.
app. That's an Ohio-based company.
No kidding.
Yeah, it's a Cleveland company, Overdrive is.
Good for us.
Yeah. And so if you're not familiar, a lot of libraries use Overdrive or Libby. They're the same thing. The app is called Libby. And it allows you to listen to audiobooks or get ebooks from your library. So you're supporting your local library without even having to go there. You just got to have a card and you can register it that way. And that's sort of what we think of the library is this repository for books and media, but you can also get cool stuff like passes to go to museums or events. My old library had passes to go to all sorts of different museums. You could just put your name on a waiting list. You can check out tools sometimes. They offer classes and all sorts of education, particularly on things like computer skills. You can make copies there so that you don't have to own your own copier or printer, reduce the amount of stuff you have in your house or other paper-related services. They've got periodicals. You can go get reference books. We talked about your textbooks earlier. You don't need to hold on to your Spanish book. You want to check out a Spanish textbook? You can probably do that at your library. My old library even had art and seeds. So you could check out seeds that you could go plant in your own backyard or art that you could rotate through your house from local artists, which I think is amazing.
That is really cool.
Yeah. What's the coolest thing you've ever gotten from the library?
So actually, I think it's one of my most recent audiobooks that I actually got through the Libby app. It's called The Art of Fermentation by Sandra Katz. And it's awesome. And I really love that. But I also got like some learning materials for learning Croatian, the language.
Yeah.
So that's been really cool. Gdje je Sunčani Trg?
Oh.
That means where is Sunčani Town Square?
I love it. So see, you are just as
Yeah.
much of a nerd as I am.
Yeah,
You're
absolutely.
using your library all the time.
Also, Cleveland Public Library offers like these really dope classes like for free just online. So I took a personal finance class and I actually also learned WordPress like through their classes, like just for free.
Yeah,
Just like a
absolutely.
6-week class. It was like so dope.
Yes,
Like why wouldn't you learn that and like put it on your LinkedIn or something?
absolutely.
You know, that's like awesome.
So libraries are sustainable for your pocketbook because those classes are probably worth a lot of money if you
Yeah.
were to pay for them. But of course, they can be more sustainable for the planet because instead of every single person having to buy that new bestseller and keep it on their shelves,
Yeah.
we're all sharing it. And I will come straight out and say that I absolutely still buy new books. I feel like buying books is a different hobby from reading books. I love the way that books make my home feel warm and inviting. But I read a lot. And so I can't go get 60 new books a year and feel like I'm living a sustainable lifestyle for my wallet or for the planet.
I know that. Yeah, I know it.
And so if I can get half those books even, and really I know I get a lot more than that from the library, then I love the idea that I'm reducing my impact a little.
Yeah, I love that.
We've talked about ways that libraries can be more sustainable for us, but libraries are still huge organizations, and huge organizations do tend to create waste. You know, they still need to run reports, they're still using paper, they're still using energy, all of that.
Yeah.
So there is a thing called the Sustainable Libraries Initiative.
Okay.
It started in 2014 and was founded under the New York Library Association. And I'm going to quote their website, their kind of mission. They provide library leaders with a tested, structured path forward to increase your library's commitment to environmental stewardship, economic feasibility, and social equity.
Wow.
Yeah, so they're thinking about sustainability with this sort of intersectional lens.
As it should be. Yeah.
Absolutely. And they talk about things like how libraries can offer education around environmental issues, what kind of books they can make sure that they have in their collection that represent those issues well, how libraries use energy and how they can use cleaner energy, how they manage their waste and recycling. Books do fall apart and they're not always salvageable. So what do you do with the pages of a book, the binding of a book that's fallen apart? How they do their purchasing, transportation. I know my library is part of a system, and so if they don't have a book at my branch, I can request it from another branch and they'll ship it on over for me. So what kind of vehicle is that being shipped in? Are we taking sustainable routes to reduce the amount of carbon emissions? The way that libraries use land, especially when we think about how they're built up on the land for permeable surfaces or impermeable surfaces, or the stewardship of that land.
You're speaking my language shortage right now.
Absolutely. And also how they use things like water. Libraries also host lots of events. They're a place that people convene. They're
Yes.
places that unhoused people will spend their days. They're important parts of our community. And so, yeah, absolutely. Got to have some water in there for people to take advantage of. So, how are we sourcing that? How are we using it well?
Yeah.
So, I want to challenge folks to look into whether their library has taken up the Sustainable Libraries Initiative. If not, maybe their library doesn't know about it or hasn't had the capacity to do it. Can you volunteer? Can you donate to your library? Can you push them, talk to your library board about taking the initiative? Or even think about ways that at your individual branch or library, you can think about how you're using the library to live a more sustainable life for yourself. So get yourself a library card and talk to the librarians.
Do you remember going to the library as like a kid, like your like school library?
Absolutely. I loved the school library. One of our, like special classes was always going to the library, learning how to use it.
Yeah. You know, one of the big images of like school that I get is those big yellow school buses, right?
Absolutely.
I feel like nothing represents school more than those big yellow school buses.
I took them to school. Did you?
Yeah, I did. Yes. Actually, it's funny. Like, not every school district has those. Like Lakewood, they don't have buses,
Oh.
which is crazy.
Do people just have to be
They just
driven to
walk.
school?
They walk.
Oh, they walk to school.
It's
Well,
so
that's
walkable.
that's great too.
Yeah, both ways uphill.
There are things called the walking school buses, which is like a public health initiative that helps kids walk to school together. So it's like exercise,
That's so good.
environmental stewardship, but also safety. But I think you're talking about real physical school buses.
I'm talking about physical school buses. These big yellow school buses are actually starting to go green.
Yellow to green.
Yellow to green. So there's kind of this push to turn these big yellow school buses from these big diesel guzzling vehicles to electric. So that's kind of just going to frame the conversation here.
Yeah.
So in 2018, a report by U.S. PIRG Education Fund found that switching U.S. school buses from diesel to electric would cut emissions by 5.3 million tons. And that's like the equivalent of taking 1 million cars off the road,
That's amazing.
which is like really cool, right? I think we got to see some more electric school buses.
Yeah.
Not everybody can walk to school. North Royalton, I could not have walked to school. It's too sprawling. There's a lot of other like suburbs and exurbs that are planned that way that kids can't walk to school.
Absolutely. And kids don't have control over where they live, so we
Yeah.
need to give them sustainable options.
Yeah. So being a great way to cut emissions, the EPA is actually already helping out with this initiative. They're awarding to grants with money earmarked in the bipartisan infrastructure law to have $5 billion distributed to school districts around the country over the next 5 years.
I love this idea.
So yeah, it's really cool. So this year, 389 school districts are receiving about 2,400 electric school buses. So that's already making a dent of like 1,800 cars off the road by just donating these vehicles to school districts.
And every little bit counts.
Every little bit counts, and over the next 4 years or so, that's only going to pick up more. So 6 of these districts actually happen to be in Ohio, which is really cool. And some of the superintendents have said it just made sense for us to apply to this grant. The maintenance of these old diesel buses and the fuel, because diesel's expensive, it's a pretty penny. It's just so much cheaper to switch to the electric bus. So it's saving school districts money, it's helping the environment, but there is a drawback. We actually see that these electric buses are over 3 times more expensive than diesel buses. And so really the only way any school district in the U.S. is going to get their hands on this is through the grants program. No school district is going to pay $350,000 when they can get a bus powered by diesel for $100,000.
Yep.
So there's still a little bit of room for maybe the price to drop to make it more economical for school districts that can't afford that. But hopefully we can also see the government pushing for even more earmarked money to switch over to electric buses.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the purpose of the Inflation Reduction Act, right? Was to try to have some economic incentives for people to be able to make greener choices. So
Yeah.
this is just one way that act is helping move the needle towards a more sustainable future. we know that maybe without the grant funding, this wouldn't have been a step that a lot of school districts could take, but the grant funding helped. And so
Exactly.
I love to see that.
Exactly. Something that I saw, though, of the 6 school districts that got this grant money in Ohio, 4 were rural and 2 were urban school districts. And I kind of wanted to pick your brain a little bit. My first thought was like, man, these urban school districts, I feel like they could probably use these school buses maybe a little bit more, because air quality in urban areas tends to be a little bit worse.
Yeah.
I'm curious what your public health perspective is like on that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I'd have to read more data to understand the differential outcomes that could come from this. But something that springs to mind for me, or a few things that spring to mind, I totally agree with you that air quality in the urban areas is very poor. Especially here in Northeast Ohio, air quality is rated really low. So having fewer emissions from school buses would probably make a big difference there.
Yeah.
But also buses are probably going shorter distances. Maybe they're also competing with other public health initiatives like walking school buses or
that's
other
true.
ways to get kids to school. I could also see the government taking an equity approach of saying that maybe, I don't know this for sure, I'm just imagining, it could be that there's a certain percentage that are sort of earmarked for urban versus suburban versus rural communities. And rural kids might be going much further to get to school.
Yeah.
So just some ideas of why it might be like that. But I love that you're thinking about these
Yeah.
intersections.
Well, I think I totally agree with you. The 2 urban districts that got it was Toledo's public school district, and then there was another district inside Columbus, Ohio, which wasn't their public school district or their municipal school district, but just a school district. And then the other 4 were rural counties, like in the middle of nowhere, kind of. So that's kind of interesting. There's kind of like a 1/3 urban, a 2/3 rural, and it might be needs-based. Like these kids in rural counties, maybe they just don't have any school buses. There's no way that they can afford a new school bus. So
Yeah, and I don't want to speak out of turn here because I'd want to find a reference to confirm what I'm about to say, but I feel like I read something about this grant a little earlier in the year that was talking about some of the requirements to be eligible made it challenging for some schools. Like my understanding was that you had to have like almost like a trade, and so maybe there are school districts where they just already lacked a school bus that would qualify. But make sure to we'll check that in the show notes and confirm that I'm right or wrong. But there, with any grant, there are going to be eligibility requirements. So maybe some of those are harder to hit for an urban school.
Yeah,
just
totally
an idea.
could be. But if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, wow, the air quality in my neighborhood is really bad. You know, maybe I want to push my school board or like my local elected officials and say, hey, why don't we just try and apply for this? You know, some elected officials, they just may not know, and that's okay. Like we have the power to dialogue with our elected officials and kind of push them on some of these positive changes.
Absolutely. I do have a friend on a local school board. So Ashley, if you're listening, let me know.
Ashley? Ashley King?
Actually, yes. Let me know, Ashley, if you want to talk about this at work.
That sounds really fun. Well, Shelby, that was our back to school segment, our back to school episode. Thank you so much for talking about all things green with me. Can you let our viewers know how they can stay in touch with us?
Absolutely, I can. If you'd like to stay connected to us, be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at One Planet Media. That's ONE1. And if you'd like to rewatch full episodes, check out our YouTube channel, All Things Green Show. You can find all of our sources from today's episode in our show notes.
We'll be back at the same time next week. Thank you so much for being a part of the global sustainability movement.